Greetings and welcome to another episode of Black Mental Health Matters. I am your host, Lakeisha J. Rigg, CEO of LJR Training and Coaching. I am a mental health advocate, and my specialties include teaching, mentoring, and coaching adolescents and young adults, as well as training educators and career practitioners. Our topic today is embracing neurodiversity, exploring ADHD and its impact. And we have the pleasure of learning from an expert in this field, Miss Terri Floyd. All right. So if you would just introduce yourself, Miss Terri Floyd.
Good morning, Lakeisha. My name is Terri Floyd. I am the founder and CEO of TF Solution Center, LLC. I am a behavioral scientist where I study the motivations and specific behaviors of why people do the things that they do. I'm also a published author. I'm a certified parent educator and coach, and I'm a mental health educator. And I'm excited to be here today.
Well, I am excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to just have a wonderful time learning from you. So let's just get right in.
Certainly.
So yes, first question: what is neurodiversity actually, and how does it relate to ADHD?
Okay. So I know neurodiversity, it seems like it's a fairly new term, but it actually was coined back in the 1990s to fight the stigma against people with autism, as well as ADHD, learning disorders like dyslexia as well. So it's used to kind of describe the differences in the way that people's brain works. So
Mhm.
to show that we all think differently and there's really no right or wrong way of how a person perceives or responds to certain things. And
Mhm.
so that's just the term that we coin or that is coined to embrace and encourage to celebrate the differences that we all have, the way that we think.
Okay, I like that. Celebrating our differences. I like the strength-based way to highlight the good in it. Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Um, our next question is, what are some of the primary characteristics and symptoms of ADHD?
So with ADHD, of course, we know that's just the acronym, but it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And so the five key aspects of the behaviors, kind of when you look at ADHD, it's attention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, even organization, as well as emotionality. And so the breakdown for like when you think about attention or inattention, so individuals that have a short attention span, difficulty sustaining attention, or difficulty listening to others, difficulty attending to details, or easily distracted. Even forgetfulness, that's one of the signs and symptoms, as well as when we think about impulsivity.
Mhm.
Could be a conversation where you're having with a person and that person may interrupt you before you're finished talking, or
Yeah.
having the difficulty waiting for a turn to in school or even in social kind of situations, conversations, as well as taking frequent risk or more like the often without thinking before acting. So that's more like the impulse control. With the hyperactivity, that's like they just constant on the go, a little bit fidgety, have difficulty remaining being still, talk excessively, even have difficulty engaging when it's time for like quiet time or quiet activities. There's a little bit of a struggle that they may deal with, and inabilities to kind of shift and transition from one task to another before completing the first task and moving on. With organization, think about cluttered spaces, struggles with like self-management and planning, difficulty with following through, sometimes even having the struggle with being reliable or reliability. Procrastination can kind of fall in that space as well, not self-diagnosing, but just thinking about certain things and symptoms that fall in when it comes to ADHD, as well as with the emotionality. That's the struggle with managing emotions, so emotional regulation or how to regulate my emotions. Emotional intensity is another kind of form to look at it as well.
Such a wonderful explanation, because as I'm listening to you, I'm just thinking about students that I observe with, any number of these characteristics. So this is very helpful. Thank you for that. How prevalent is ADHD in the population, and are there any differences in its occurrences across genders and age groups?
Okay. So looking at research, of course, with prevalence, a lot of times we see that there's a higher percentage of men or boys that's diagnosed compared
Mm,
with ADHD compared to women or girls. But the interesting thing is, I think it's due to even with the way that the diagnosis is sometimes viewed. It's not the significant differences sometimes fall in between based on what may look like in one group compared to others.
okay.
A lot of times it's higher in African American males, and then the second that falls under is Caucasian males. And the girls sometimes, or women, girls and women, they're not really diagnosed. That's kind of a misdiagnosed because it doesn't look the same. If
Right.
it's not hyperactive or inattention, it could be struggles with organization, but that can go overlooked through years and
Yeah.
later on, sometimes as adults, then they become diagnosed. If they become parents, their child is diagnosed with ADHD, and then the parent may like, okay, well, I think I have some of those signs or symptoms or similar, or maybe had struggles in school, and now I'm trying to have questions or understanding to see what the issue could potentially be. But it is prevalent. I think there's still not a lot of individuals that have been diagnosed.
Yeah.
So it's still a lot that are unknown. And although with the diagnosis, when you look at the statistics, the rates or the numbers, percentages high based on the males compared to women in females, but
Mhm.
it could be the same. Sometimes we don't have all of the data that we need.
Right, right, exactly. And no, it makes complete sense when you're describing how it shows up with males as opposed to females. I currently work with all girls at all girls school, and to your point, it looks different. In the way that it shows up in the girls. Like you said, not being organized, and just certain type of behaviors that lends itself to maybe just like you said being not diagnosed, like because it looks different in the boys and males, and people just may look at that more and not realize that females may have it as well in a different way. So thank you for that. That's
Mhm.
very helpful. So our next question: what are some effective strategies for supporting individuals with ADHD in educational settings? As I just mentioned, I work with all girls, and I observe that the symptoms and what you described in them.
Yeah. And that's a good question, especially because, like you said, in your field, you do kind of see it a little bit more common sometimes. With that, one of the things or effective strategies that can be utilized in the educational setting is focusing on short term goals,
Mm,
trying to make sure that even when there's steps, be as simple as possible. Sometimes, as teachers, because I'm an educator as well, that we kind of get carried away with complex
yeah.
kind of instructions. And if a child or individual is diagnosed with ADHD, it's hard for them to follow that full on complex instruction. So if
Mhm.
you can break it down in small instructions, small, simple, and clear, concise instructions, that will help them to be able to follow along and complete tasks. Also, another form of with supporting individuals with ADHD in educational settings is to reward good behavior in work. So
Mm,
utilizing positive reinforcement.
sure.
Anytime with children, even adults, we like to
Mhm.
be rewarded for the work that we do. With good behavior, if you see if the individual, if it's our boss, manager, or our professor, teacher, notice and sees the effort that we're putting in and we're rewarded, whether it's a positive good job or a
Yeah.
reward or treat or something throughout at the end of the week or something like that. It's something
Yeah.
to look forward to, and they can remember and kind of keep that into the rotation of making sure that they are sticking to completing the task. Also, making sure to have a consistent routine.
Mm-hmm.
With individuals with ADHD, it's important to have a routine, kind of lay it out in a plan, because some may struggle with organizational skills or even time management. So if you have a space where you can block that off and incorporate that time to break down the projects, as well as a consistent routine so they know what to look
Yeah.
forward to, that also helps. Thinking about kind of utilizing like a visual board.
Yeah.
So if there's individuals, even if they're not diagnosed with ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
it's helpful, especially in an educational setting, utilizing a visual to show, okay, this is at this time we're working on this. It should be this amount of time to work on that. Once you complete that, all right, we're moving to the next step. That way they can visualize and see the steps as well, is another form to help. Limiting and reducing distractions.
Yeah.
Another thing that if they're in the educational space where testing, if they need noise cancellation headphones,
Sure.
or remove to like a space that's specific designated for them when it comes to testing, that if people have to get up and turn in their assignment, it's
Yeah.
behind them and not reflecting in their peripheral. Um, Communicating clear directions, that's another one, and as well as providing tools for direction to help them stay organized, like I mentioned, with the visual, to see kind of that chart, the visual mapping, as well as utilizing organizational tools. If it's a notebook that is listed and writing down things to know, like, okay, this planner, this is going to help me stay focused and on task. Check it off and go next to the to-do list. That is beneficial and helpful as well for individuals with ADHD in an educational setting.
You are just, as I like to say in my class, dropping gems. I hope there are people out there watching, listening, taking notes, whether they're in the education field or a parent, caregiver, loved one, somebody with ADHD. What you're saying is really true. And I hear what you're saying as far as like what I'm taking away is like universal design. As you said, it's
Yes.
not just for the individuals that with ADHD, but just even, all students in the classroom
Mhm.
can benefit from structure,
Mhm.
consistency, clear directions, minimizing distractions, and really, as you said, like positive reinforcement. I'm constantly giving praise because there is something to be said for all of us, young people and, adults. We like to feel like we're doing something right. So, and especially for those individuals that have ADHD that struggle with focus,
Mhm.
it's nice to be able to hear, oh, you're doing that well. Then they'll be more likely to try to do the next step as opposed to like, man, like she's saying I'm not doing it when I'm supposed to or what have you. So excellent points. Dropping gems, people hopefully taking notes, people out there listening to us, watching. Thank you so much. So next question. How does ADHD impact the daily life and functioning of individuals who have it? So what are they, really going through on a day to day?
With that, just thinking about kind of like when we went over the symptoms or kind of the signs of a person that's potentially has ADHD or has been recently diagnosed, it can affect relationships. It also impacts social skills, especially depending on if you're just new to finding out that you've been diagnosed with ADHD or misdiagnosed and have not been diagnosed yet. Social skills being even misunderstood, because while we are embracing the neurodiversity as well as having more conversations about ADHD, there's still a lot of individuals that are unaware and don't really know exactly what it is. In particular, sometimes in the African American community, it's still a little bit of pushback when it comes to that diagnosis. And so we sometimes can, because it's not really new, but it could be new to us to a certain extent, that
Yeah.
instead of researching or asking more questions about what it is, if you don't know, then it's like, I'll just shut it out, or I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to discuss it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that can be a little bit of a damper that can cause the impacts with daily lives. Even with knowing the difficulties, especially with difficulty in focusing, um,
Mhm.
thinking about adults sometimes that are adults that have just recently been being diagnosed with ADHD at an adult age. It makes sense from kind of some of the struggles that they may have had when they were children, but it's still, there's some that still find it difficult to focus and prioritize at work. Um, Inability to control impulses, but it's the trouble. But once you are able to kind of have that understanding and can put a name to it, that
Yeah.
can definitely help and be beneficial. But yeah, I would still say with it affects relationships. If you get the diagnosis and have a little bit of understanding, but sometimes your counterparts or family members may not fully understand, so then it's like, okay, now I'm having to educate myself and even try to educate them. But
Yeah.
sometimes everybody doesn't want to be educated because they just don't
No,
need
it's a
it.
lot.
So that can affect and put damper on relationships as well as social skills and the feelings of being misunderstood. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, all of that you said, I can think of at least one person that comes to mind now, an adult in my life. And I don't think they were ever really diagnosed, but like you said, when you get older, even if it was not diagnosed, it makes sense. Some of the
Mhm.
challenges that you may have had, as a younger person. Relationships is a big one. I'm glad you touched on that. Be it platonic or romantic, just people in general,
Yes.
and just connecting with them, because they might likely not have your way of your brain working, then their brain works in a different way, and so the way that you are, it's definitely a challenge. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing all that.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right, so what are some potential challenges or barriers faced by individuals with ADHD when seeking educational or employment opportunities?
Just to kind of piggyback on kind of the things that we already mentioned, with
We're
our
building.
yeah, we'll build it all to it. I'll start especially like with the adults.
Hmm.
Sometimes when we think about the adults that have ADHD, in the workplace, that those time management difficulties, that can play, is a big challenge, especially with when you're trying to focus on completing tasks, guidelines, and thinking. When I mentioned back with the educational space of creating kind of like that, or in supporting individuals with ADHD in educational settings, you can utilize some of that even in your workspace as an
Hmm.
adult. That is to break down projects into smaller pieces, with step by step due dates. Now, of course, that means you have to work on your organizational skills, but utilizing timeline charts or just a planner where you can write it down. Even I know technology now is
Hmm.
everywhere, so we either have our phone or we have computers. So even if you have to plug in something that you need that has a due date in your date on your phone. That way you can get that alert on your phone. You can have that alert on your Microsoft Outlook or whatever you utilize on your work computer. That can keep you up to date. I'm still old school. I put the things like I have a planner on my phone, but I also still walk around with the planner because I need to
Yeah.
visually see it. Um,
Yeah.
I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but there are times that I know I struggle with executive function,
Hmm.
functioning skills. So I kind of group myself in that space and practice some of the things that I incorporate in talking with individuals that have been diagnosed with ADHD. Um,
Hmm.
Even as adults, even if you don't have someone providing positive reinforcement to you, reward yourself for completing
Oh,
the task.
that part. Yes,
That is
absolutely.
important to celebrate the small steps. Like if you can complete this task and move on from that due date to something else, that
Yeah.
is really important. Because everyone needs to be able to be rewarded by someone else, but then sometimes we need to learn to celebrate and reward ourselves. Um, like I stated with the procrastination
Hmm.
earlier, putting things off, that not only prevents us of completing the task, but it also creates problems, especially if other people are waiting on us to like
Right.
a project to pass it down, or you're not even able to effectively like do the best work that you possibly can.
Hmm.
So that also plays a part. If you know that you're diagnosed with ADHD and you have a relationship with your supervisor that's on a positive level,
Hmm.
ask the supervisor to set deadlines for the task. That way you can work with them together and they can
Oh
give the
no.
know you have this diagnosis that
Right.
you and if they know, then they can help you. Now,
Yeah.
of course, sometimes we think about it depending on, again, the relationship that you have with your employer, that you don't want them to like, oh, I don't want them to hold that against me. However, you still need to have a plan, whether it's
Mhm.
don't have that good of a relationship with the supervisor. Make sure that you are planning for yourself by
Right.
utilizing alarms, utilizing planners on your computer,
Yeah.
and things in that nature. Um, Also consider working with a person that's on your team
Mhm.
that manages time well. That way you can
Yeah.
hold each other accountable. That's definitely important as well. Other things that I can think about outside of just with the adults, but again with children, just trying to, with the time management, having the visual skills, hopefully, or the visual maps, the things to help with them planning. um with teachers and parents, because this is definitely important when it comes to students or children that are in school, to make sure that everyone is on the same board and
Mhm.
understand and know.
Yeah.
If you know that your child or student has ADHD, to make sure that you are putting them in a space that they're either sitting closer to you so they can stay focused, removing of the distractions and allowing those small breaks. In moments where you know, okay, they've been sitting a long time,
Right.
let's get up, let's take a quick
Sure.
break,
Yeah.
let them kind of regroup and get themselves back straight, and so they can get back to working. By incorporating that, it's not going to take away from time.
Mhm.
If you actually plan that in, that will
Yeah.
help and not cause more of a disruption later on if you haven't kind of utilize those a bit and know kind of what they need. If even if you need them to pass out papers, that's
Yeah.
something to get them up, moving
Something.
around,
Yeah.
sit down. That keeping them structured in a way of organized to know, like, okay, you pass these out. Now we go back and sit down and
Mhm.
let's get to work. This is the next thing that we need to work on.
Right.
But it definitely takes a collaborative effort,
Mhm.
whether it's we're adults in the workplace or even children in school sections. And so, with the potential challenges and barriers that we face, it's like
Mhm.
have to communicate and talk about what's
Yeah.
going on. Because if
Yeah.
no one knows, then that's a problem as well. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm hearing a lot of wonderful things, and one of the things I'm hearing is that you need a support system, whether you're, a young person and, your teachers and your parents and everybody's, helping you to, break down things and figure out a way, to keep you structured and organized, or even you're an adult, whether you're a manager or an employee. It's good to be able to try that, to build that relationship, even though I know, from what you've shared, those individuals with ADHD struggle with relationship, but it's important to try to make relationships, and especially to have individuals understand why you may do the things that you do so they can support you accordingly. So yeah, so much good things that you have shared. Thank you so much. And yeah, I have all types of reminders as a teacher. I have to remind myself to do a million things. So I think being organized and setting reminders, and universally, a lot of us could benefit that, whether even if we don't have the diagnosis. So
Yes, absolutely.
absolutely, absolutely. So what are some of the strengths or talents? I love how you started us off with, celebrating the differences. What are some of the strengths or talents associated with ADHD that should be celebrated and nurtured?
Right. So of course, like we talked about celebrating neurodiversity and the importance of celebrating the differences. And then we highlighted about kind of the symptoms and signs. And of course, they kind of steered or kind of looked at it or can appear to be a negative light of kind of the
Mhm.
struggles that individuals with ADHD experience. Now, however, so even with looking at, even when we mentioned about the attention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, organization, as well as the emotionality, that could be struggles or issues based on the key aspects of the behavior. Now you can kind of flip that in a way.
Mhm.
So by utilizing and looking at it as the strengths and talents, most individuals with ADHD are creative.
Yeah.
Interest.
Yeah. Yes.
They look at things at the big picture, and they think outside the box, as well as they're comfortable with change and chaos.
Yes.
So, with breaking it down with creativity, many people with ADHD, they have an extremely creative and imaginative background. Walt Disney, he was diagnosed with ADHD, and he has Disney World. So even
Right.
head, they're often graced with like having that tremendous or special originality, and they can utilize that in it as a powerful tool. So think about actors, singers, playing an
Mhm.
instrument, building, painting, or exploring anything that is creative where they can utilize their hands or even their mind, their inner artist or engineer. That is one way that you can like, okay, the creativity is there.
Yeah.
Being adventurous. So they're risk takers. A lot of times when you think about impulse, it's like, oh, you do something without actually thinking about it.
Yeah.
But instead of like, of course, there's risk in everything and anything that we possibly do to make sure that not causing any harm or whatever to themselves, but they're willing to take risks. So even
Mhm.
if they're in a business or sometimes CEOs
Yeah.
have ADHD, good business thinkers or business individuals, that they're willing to take the risk, not afraid,
Yeah.
that they challenge themselves. Sometimes they even have physical goals where like to climb mountain peaks or
Huh.
um, crossing oceans, doing some type of extreme, utilizing being an extreme athlete, but that adventurousness that they have is something that is one of their strengths and talents. When we think about mentioning us with individuals ADHD, that they're not able, that they kind of miss deadlines or not able to focus. But the interesting thing about individuals that are diagnosed with ADHD, they look at the big picture. While
Mhm.
sometimes you have individuals that pay attention to detail, to every intricate detail,
Mhm.
sometimes even with paying attention to every intricate detail with individuals that are specific like that, they can't really see the overall big picture. They only
Right.
see those steps. But
Right.
with an individual that is diagnosed with ADHD, they can see the big picture without even seeing the steps. And
Right.
by utilizing that, rather than keeping them narrow focused or narrow minded, they are drawn to like abstract ideas that they can
Mhm.
see it, even though they need other individuals to help them kind of get to their process, but they can see the
Right.
overall big picture. So
Yeah.
it's still a way that neurodiversity, where we all think differently, but we all work together when we understand each other and allow each other to think and perceive and respond the way that's needed. Um,
Love
Thinking
it.
outside the box, that is another one of their things, because they're nonconformist.
Yeah.
They have the imaginative ideas that they want to do the things that they kind of want to do through challenge sometimes to other people. Now, of course, this can sometimes be a problem in school, but it can become a true asset
Yeah.
in the working force as they get older, where they think outside the box, that they're innovative. So everybody, companies, organizations are always looking for innovative ways, and well, you have that innovative mindset or thinking when they think outside the box and can come with the big picture and bring it to your organization, as well as the last one, comfortable with chaos and change, because individuals
Mhm.
with ADHD, they sometimes live in chaos and confusion. Now,
Mhm.
to us,
Yeah.
we say, okay, that room is a mess. How can you just maneuver in that? But that's the way that they work. And so
That's
while
the
it
way
may
that they work.
bother us, that is kind of
Mhm.
their genius that they can utilize, and that helps them, that they can cope with specific coping strategies or have
Mhm.
specific coping strategies that they can adapt well and be more flexible than sometimes some of the individuals that only specific that focus on one step at a time. That lots of energy on the go
Mhm.
is important, and that is in sometimes we can look at it in a negative standpoint if we need them to kind of be still at the moments that we need them to be, but they are often outgoing. They have an outgoing personality. They're extroverts. They like talking to people. They like to
Mhm.
engage with individuals. So if you have a nonprofit or you're looking for people that can be good sales or marketing individuals,
Mhm.
sometimes individuals that are diagnosed with ADHD is the way to go because they can talk to people, they can entertain, they can raise funds, they can run for office or do anything to bring
Absolutely.
people in, and they're always on the go. So those are the strengths and talents that we can look at
I
um,
love it.
with ADHD.
Oh my goodness. I took a lot away from that. They are adventurous,
Mhm.
risk takers, outgoing, fun, visionaries. I don't know if you said that word, but that's what I'm thinking when I
Yeah.
think about big picture. And I love
Mhm.
how you made the contrast of, those that are into the, minute details, which has its value
Right.
sometimes. But on the flip side of it, I love, like a big picture visionary,
Mhm.
can see things that other people can't even see. And that's definitely one of the many strengths and talents you mentioned. Like you said, different celebrities, and there's so many different, individuals,
Mhm.
entrepreneurs, individuals that really. And when I talk to my students and clients about say different strengths and talents and what career paths it lends itself to, it's important to be self-aware and
Mhm.
to know yourself, whether you have ADHD or not. Just know about yourself and see what type of paths it can lend itself. So if you have ADHD, you're like, hey, I could maybe be an entrepreneur,
Right.
all these variety of things. So it's important to know oneself, and you really laid it out really well, so thank you.
Mhm.
Really wonderful. Okay, so I'm just all into that question answer. So now let me move on. What are some non-medication based approaches to managing ADHD symptoms, such as behavioral therapy or lifestyle changes? Because let's be honest, especially within our community,
Mhm.
oftentimes we may not want to consider our child or loved one or what have you having ADHD, because the immediate thought might be, okay, they have to go on medication.
Right.
So yes, what are some non-medication approaches?
So there are some natural remedies. Of course, I'll do a disclaimer, not a medical professional. However, at the same time, these are natural remedies that can be utilized. You can also research them for yourself as well, and you do what's best for you and yourself as well as your family. So the things that are non-medication based, well, the first one is it's not kind of like a medication that's that you can get from a doctor. You can get it over the counter, but sometimes they can prescribe the medication as well, or it's really more supplements. It's vitamins. Taking supplements and vitamins can definitely provide like a host of benefits for anyone's like mental as well as physical well-being.
Mhm.
There's research that has been shown that sometimes we can, or well, research has definitely shown that especially in the African American community, that we can be vitamin deficient. And
Mm.
so, and that is regardless whether you're diagnosed with ADHD or not. But there's certain supplements based off of research that shows that it can help significantly reduce or kind of minimize the symptoms of ADHD.
Mhm.
Now, these include kind of vitamin B6. And so that's known for its role in the production of serotonin. And it's B vitamins that play a role in the production of chemicals, kind of like with helping with getting that energy in those levels. Now, of course, you're diagnosed with ADHD, you want to have that balance or whatnot. Vitamin D is another one that it definitely plays a critical role in brain development and functioning.
Mhm.
With that if you're low with vitamin D, sometimes it has been linked, well, not sometimes, it has been linked to this depression. That
Mm.
when you're feeling low, especially with weather changing and whatnot, sometimes our vitamin D levels are lower and you may feel groggy or not be in the mood to do certain things. And
Okay.
so increasing vitamin D sometimes can help play a role with helping with our moods, shifting our mood. Zinc is another supplement that regulates dopamine, and that's related to attention issues, as well as magnesium. Having that deficiency is known to cause hyperactivity and irritability in symptoms with individuals with ADHD. And research has shown that there has been a positive response when people with ADHD take magnesium. It's like a significant decrease in the active behavior, excuse me. And
Mhm.
iron helps the brain produce dopamine, and it's widely accepted. That's been different in people with ADHD, and it shows sometimes the symptoms that kind of link with ADHD, the iron deficiency. And
Okay.
so taking zinc and iron together might be helpful. Now that was the supplement thing.
Right,
A few
right.
other ones that is non-medication based is therapy. Of course,
Mhm.
we have the behavioral therapy that focus on cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness based cognitive therapy, and family therapy, and even couples counseling, because we mentioned earlier how it affects relationships.
Right,
So utilizing therapy, having that support system, having the your village to kind of understand the diagnosis, because
right,
even though one person might have been diagnosed in the entire family is affected.
right,
And so by utilizing and incorporating a therapy that cannot help create that structured routine, as
right.
well as manage distractions and kind of improve the concentration with individuals that have recently been diagnosed. Calming techniques is another form of a non-medication approach,
Right.
where that includes positive productivity focus, such as mindfulness meditation,
Mhm.
having breathing exercises, journaling for mental health. I am an advocate to journal. Uh,
Yes.
and yoga, tai chi, those things.
Mm.
Yoga has been shown to be kind of like an effective natural remedy in studies too, specifically actually in young males with
Mm.
ADHD.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
by
Okay.
now, of course, they've kind of combined it with taking daily medication and combining daily yoga practice and improve anxiety, hyperactivity, and social issues. So it's still kind of teaching that balance, teaching you to process and regulate emotions, as well as giving that discipline that's needed and necessary,
Sure.
not just for individuals with ADHD, but everybody, because we
Right.
all benefit from discipline.
Absolutely.
Maintaining healthy sleep habits. Eight
Mm.
hours of sleep. You definitely need to get your rest. Rest is important, because when we do not get the appropriate amount of rest for our age and for our group, it affects how we react, how we
Right.
respond, and that is just for
Exactly.
anyone across the board.
Absolutely.
Especially, but it plays more of effect to individuals that have been diagnosed with ADHD, and trying to manage system or symptoms is definitely one of those important ways to utilize the non-medication based approach. Another one, paying attention to your diet. Now,
Mm.
even regardless if you're trying to eat healthy to lose weight or not, or you're just trying to eat healthy to maintain, um,
Right.
when we have individuals that are diagnosed with ADHD, diet plays a part in it. It's best to eat low or non-processed foods, because processed foods has a lot of things in them, reducing the sugar intake, because sugar, the caffeine, that affects their balance levels, especially if they're diagnosed with ADHD and could be hyperactive. And so
Right.
those two together is kind of like
Mm-mm.
a little bit of a disaster, especially based
Right.
on age and thinking of our young children that have been diagnosed. So eating a balanced diet full of fresh and whole, minimal processed foods is
Right.
good overall general health, and that's for
Right.
everyone again. Anyway,
Everybody.
um,
Yeah.
and getting enough exercise. Exercise is another one that's important. And you think about individuals that are diagnosed with ADHD, that kind of helps burn off that excess energy that they may have, and it can keep you healthy, heart healthy. So we want to burn
Yeah.
and utilize cardio as much as possible. Be active, be physically fit. But those are the non-medication based approaches to managing ADHD
Mm.
symptoms.
Like I said, I hope those who are listening, watching, are taking notes. Get your journal. Like you said, you recommend journaling. Take your journal out, write down some gems that Miss Terry Field is sharing. Like, I'm hearing just like overall self-care, taking care of yourself, which as you alluded to or maybe specifically mentioned, like for all of us, but definitely for individuals with ADHD, because not doing some of these things can show up in a more significant challenging ways for those with ADHD. But just for all of us, like supplements and calming techniques and exercise and sleep. Ooh, sleep. Any one of us doesn't have the proper amount of sleep, the next day we're not functioning as we should. So especially those that struggle with ADHD. Absolutely. So people, please take out your pens and papers if you have not yet. That's the teacher in me. Like, let's write it down, right? Let's
Right.
learn during this time. So let me see what else we have here. What are some common misconceptions? These are some additional questions that we have about ADHD, and how can we address them to promote understanding and acceptance, especially because you mentioned that an individual may learn that they have ADHD and they're trying to learn how to cope, but then having to like educate someone else, whether it's someone they're in a relationship with, or just according to this question, just in general, like how can we promote address it and promote understanding and acceptance for especially those that don't understand it.
Right, right. A lot of there's definitely some myths that are out there in regards to ADHD. A few of them I have listed, that ADHD isn't a real medical condition. Even though, of course, there is a diagnosis, there has been signs and symptoms to kind of highlight and show, as well as research. There's still that conversation that individuals don't believe it and it's not real. That people with Another myth is people with ADHD need to try harder. It's like you're just being lazy or you just don't want to focus and you just need to focus, but not a really understanding that it's not that they don't want to do it. It's a little bit of a struggle for them. And just by kind of having a better understanding, we can kind of work and maneuver together with this, and to support and help them. That another myth is only boys are diagnosed with ADHD. And as we mentioned, now, of course, research shows that males based on the statistics, are diagnosed at a higher percentage and rate compared to women. But we know that because ADHD does not look the same, it's not one straight target or straight shot with straight symptoms, that it can vary and be different, and it looks different in each individual, whether male or female. So that's one of the myths that we still deal with. Even with ADHD, if you're diagnosed as a kid, that you can outgrow it. I'm not going to say that you can outgrow it. Now you can manage it. You can provide, like, do the resources and utilize the strategies that we discussed and talked about to kind of get it under control, to manage and maintain it. But at the same time, if you incorporate a healthy diet, healthy exercising, and trying to do everything with self-care, taking care of yourself, I'm not going to say you can't outgrow it, but at the same time, it's still a diagnosis and it's there, but you can do your best to make sure to limit the medication that you may need to be on, and just find ways to manage it in your own space. As well as another one is ADHD is a result of bad parenting. And as parents, sometimes we can take the guilt or onto us, like, what could we have done better, or what did I not do? And it's not really even when it comes to that. So again, sometimes it could be in our family and we don't know that ADHD was there because misdiagnosed or undiagnosed. And so it really has nothing to do with bad parenting. It's just the way sometimes the thing is, but the perfect way to embrace it and to understand it is to recognize the way that we think is different, to recognize that even if you just received that diagnosis, now that you finally have a name to it, and once you can name it, then there are solutions, there are strategies, there's research, there's information out there to help you. A lot of times we have a struggle because we don't have a name, and so we're trying to figure it out and guess and say, well, it's because of this, or this on your mama's side, or your dad's side, or whoever. But
blaming somebody.
Yeah. once you get a name to it, then you can kind of narrow down and utilize that voice and know that this is what it is. This is not death. It's not a death sentence. It's just
Right.
but we can still prevail and embrace this and still live a healthy, normal life as much as possible. So.
Yes, all of that you said, like, just, yeah, it's not a death sentence, it's not the end, and like not, kicking the can of blaming, like, oh, it's on daddy's side, your mama's side. Like, I love that whole just word embracing, like, and like you said, like, once you know what something is, anything, in this case, ADHD, and you like accept and embrace that this is what, let's say, your child has, then you're already like one step in the right direction of, okay, how can I then help? And then some of the things that you've already shared as far as like, strategies, but it's like, first that, like, let's just embrace it. Let's not be like, okay, like you said, myths, it doesn't exist, it's not real. Right. That's not really going to help you or your child if you keep on saying it's not real, right?
Ignoring it is not going to help.
I love the realness in what you said as far as like just, embracing it, and then you can move forward. And also too, what you said about, you said it, previously, but now as far as like, it looks different in males, versus females. And what I think when I think about, whether it be my students or, adults in my life who I've observed, for females, sometimes it just looks like the stereotypical, female that's just doing everything, right? But we may not know how much she is struggling to work that much harder to have her brain to work in such a way to get everything done, right? And so sometimes it just looks like, from my observations, and I want to know your thoughts, sometimes it just looks like a high functioning person that's getting everything done, but their focus is like all over and they have to work that much harder. So before I go on to the next question, that's what came to mind when you were sharing. I want to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. And like I mentioned earlier, that I have not been diagnosed with ADHD, but I'm definitely high functioning, and can sometimes seem like that I'm doing a lot, especially when it comes to family members and friends.
Doing a lot.
And so I've learned to kind of manage and do better with executive functioning, because I can have ideas, and the way my mind works, it's always working on certain different things. And I've had to learn to break it down in pieces to complete projects to complete. And so like you said, as it wasn't me having the impulse of unable to sit still, move around, and not interrupting. It was just the way that my mind works. I can always see a big picture, even sometimes when I don't see the small step, and I have to learn to break it down. So absolutely.
Yes, same. And I think maybe that's in part why, as we're talking about this topic, we can, both of us, sort of have that level of understanding and acceptance, because we seemingly have some characteristics of, high functioning, doing this, that, and the third, and, try to find ways probably to help ourselves to be calming and, just finish this and that or what have you. So yeah, absolutely. I am right there with you. Okay, so how does embracing neurodiversity benefit society and create a more inclusive environment for individuals with ADHD?
And it's kind of what we just even mentioned just with the previous question, and even sharing our own story. It's to recognize and embrace the diverse ways that individuals, that how they think, how we learn, how we perceive the world. I believe if the society, if we can just understand and embrace everyone's unique perspectives and learning capabilities, then it would definitely, that's one in particular, one of the ways how we can embrace neurodiversity, as well as create an inclusive environment for individuals with ADHD, with individuals that are on the autism spectrum, or individuals that have dyslexia, dysgraphia, any of these learning disorders or challenges that affect neurologically. I think if we can create that and embrace individuals and know that we're diverse, the way that we learn, the way that we think, the way that we perceive, it's no right or wrong, and have that support and understanding, then that's how we can continue to embrace neurodiversity and will benefit the society and everyone that's included in the society as well.
Absolutely. And going back to what you shared earlier, as far as like strengths and talents and seeing big picture. So if we really, as a society, learn how to just embrace the diversity, that we have in sort of all areas of diversity, neurodiversity, and every other area, then it's like we bring so much to the table instead of like pushing back on something, and someone and whatever they have.
Mhm.
It's like, how can I get these big picture ideas, these visionary ideas, these go-getter, outgoing, like how can I get some of that vibe? Like if we really just embrace things, we would be that much better for it instead of pushing back and, saying things are not real and all the things you
Mhm.
mentioned.
Absolutely.
So absolutely, absolutely. Okay, let me see. I think we have another question. We may have touched on this because we're so awesome. At sharing the gems that you've been dropping all day that I feel like even prior to the questions being asked, we're just flowing. We're just
Mhm.
flowing, dropping
Mhm.
knowledge and gems and such. But how can employers create an accommodating and supportive workplace for employees with ADHD? We kind of touched on this of that,
Mhm.
support system and things, but if you have anything else to add, that would be wonderful.
Just kind of even with the workspace, I touched on the time management strategies, having assistive technology, incorporating accommodations for meetings, career counseling. That's even a benefit to help individuals with ADHD, providing
Mhm.
a flexible schedule. Creating a space that's like a private workspace and noise canceling headphones is definitely important in written instructions so they can visualize it and can see it, and having training for supervisors and coworkers to understand individuals that are on the that with neurodivergent people, and having that mindset to know to create this inclusive workspace. So while
Mhm.
you may have an individual or a worker or employee that's on your team or your staff that is diagnosed with ADHD, if everyone has the understanding to know, they can create a more inclusive environment that can be accommodating and supportive to the employees. So,
This is a win-win for all of us.
mhm,
Absolutely. Exactly. Like, supporting, embracing, allowing for the proper accommodation so you can get the most out of your employees. I couldn't agree more. I
yes.
think there's another question that I had here that may not show up per se, but uh what are some six and you mentioned like people in different careers, but what are some successful stories of individuals with ADHD
Mhm.
who have thrived in their personal and professional life?
Yes, with utilizing like the creativity, kind of what we mentioned about the being the
Mhm.
creative, thinking outside the box, adventurous. I wanted to just highlight even thinking about individuals that, like we said, it's good to put a name and a face to certain things. You put a name
Mhm.
to the diagnosis of ADHD of what it is, and then we can see individuals that are successful, that are thriving in their personal and professional lives. And
Mhm.
there's a few that I wanted to highlight and mention. Simone Biles. We know she's an amazing U.S. gymnast. She's diagnosed with ADHD. Will I Am, he is a producer, songwriter, singer. Um, he has ADHD, that creativity, writing songs.
Mhm.
Solange Knowles, Beyonce's little
Mhm.
sister, she's diagnosed with ADHD. She's an amazing songwriter, singer. Stevie Wonder, yes, we know that he's
Mhm.
blind, but he's also
Okay.
diagnosed with ADHD, and we know how amazing and a musical genius that he is. Individuals that are acting, Audra McDonald, she's an actress. She's
Hmm.
diagnosed with ADHD. Michael Jordan,
Okay.
the professional basketball player. We know he's one of the GOATs. And so, yes, he's diagnosed with ADHD. Will Smith, he self-diagnosed, but he
Okay.
highlights certain signs and symptoms that's similar, and he can connects with individuals with ADHD. He said if he was diagnosed with it younger,
Mhm.
as a kid, they probably could have helped a couple of things. But even having the name to it now, he knows how to manage it. Whoopi Goldberg, diagnosed with ADHD.
Hmm.
So these are successful individuals with ADHD that have thrived in their professional as well as in their personal lives. And so by utilizing and understanding, like we stated, having the name and knowing about embracing your creativity, embracing your talents and strengths will help incorporate to you can be added to your own success story as well. That
Mm,
again, like we stated, ADHD, being diagnosed with it or having a diagnosis is not a death sentence.
right.
I want to kind of shift the focus and look at it as your superpower. And
Mm.
so now, since you have a name to your superpower, then you know how to manage it and utilize it for your success. So,
Mm, I love that. I don't know if I knew if any of those individuals had ADHD, but
mhm,
that just goes to show that, for those who are listening, and if they have that diagnosis or a parent, caregiver, or someone is, thinking about their child or someone they're caregiving, it's like this person could, be out here doing amazing things. I don't like to say you be the next whoever because I want you to be yourself. I don't want to say be
right.
the next Michael Jordan or the next Solange, but
Mhm,
be the next you, best version of you with, ADHD if that's what you have. So I love that you shared those successful stories because oftentimes when individuals have, something, a condition or what have you, whatever that may be, and they don't know of someone else that has that's
mhm,
thriving, it kind of just doesn't give you that representation to see that
yeah,
you can be successful. So I like that you shared that. So yeah, I don't think I knew of any of those individuals at ADHD, and look at them thriving. Very nice, very nice.
yeah,
And I was adding some more questions, hence I was just trying to add it so that I could ask you because some of those I know I had planned to ask, and I want to make sure that we ask them. So another question,
mhm.
what are some resources that parents and caregivers can use to help support individuals living with ADHD?
Um, Definitely, I would encourage research. There are several books that are out there that are available, to especially for parents and caregivers. If you want to kind of get more information about ADHD, if your child has been recently diagnosed with ADHD, you've been diagnosed with ADHD. One of the books is Parenting ADHD, and that
Mm-hmm.
provides more effective strategies to kind of help you with
Okay.
the time management, helping with processing certain things. There's other books that's Raising Boys with ADHD. And now, of
Oh,
course, we know the
okay.
diagnosis is higher when it comes to boys, but you can even with that book, yes, specific to boys, but you
Mm,
can utilize it and use it even if you have daughters as
got
well.
it. Well,
And then there are some support groups that are out there
mhm.
that are available in your areas if you look in research,
Okay.
wherever you are located, as well as there are some support groups that are online with
Oh, okay.
to assist family members and caregivers that are
Mhm.
living or have individuals living with ADHD. So there's resources that are available and out there. You're welcome to Google and type them in, and they will pull up for sure. But those two books, Parenting ADHD as well as Raising Boys with ADHD, are two books that has some beneficial and useful
Okay.
tips there.
Okay, people. I think we're gonna in a moment wrap it up. But again, I hope you have your pens and papers. We just gave some pens, pencil, paper. Just gave some more gems by Miss Terri Floyd here. So please be writing down this information. This is very valuable information at that. A last question that I know that I wanted to ask, and make sure I can get it going here for you. Um, what is some advice you would offer to those living with ADHD and the loved ones of those living with ADHD? Like a
I
sh-
would say, again, that ADHD is not a death sentence. You being diagnosed with that is to, once you receive that diagnosis, you finally have a name to it. By learning, educating yourself through self-advocacy. That's a way to empower yourselves with living with ADHD, as well as to have this support system through educating your family members and loved ones. I think it's important that collectively we work together to know that we have that village to support and encourage us and empower, and that we can all get through this together, because embracing neurodiversity means to embrace the diverse ways that we think, that we learn, that we respond and perceive. And so when we can embrace our superpower, like we said, then that's a way that we can continue to be empowered and continue to thrive. Because even with this, there has individuals that have diagnosed with ADHD that are thriving and successful, and you will be too. So don't look at it as a death sentence. Look at it as when you put a name to it. There's solutions, there's treatments, there's symptoms that are available and out there for you. There's continuous research, it's ongoing research that is always there, and having that support to empower yourself to understand your superpower, and you will continue to thrive. So
I could just listen to you and learn and get all the gems you're dropping for quite a lot longer. But I think that our time is up. My time is up. But it has been such an absolute pleasure to learn from you, to listen to you, and I hope that those who are watching, listening, have also enjoyed listening and learning. Before we say goodbye, anything else that you want to share with the people? I think you've said so much. If you just want to say goodbye and some nice pleasantries, that is sufficient as well. But thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure.
Okay, all right then. So this has been another episode of Black Mental Health Matters. We thank you for listening, for watching, and be well.